Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 16th regular meeting of Council and the first meeting of 2017. I would like to note that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish First Nations, which we acknowledge with gratitude. And I'd like to point out that unfortunately Councillor Powell is not feeling very well and she won't be here this evening. First item on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes of the public hearing December 5th, 2016. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor, it's been too long, Councillor Patterson. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you, that is carried. The next item is the minutes of the council meeting held December 5th, 2016. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Beale, seconded by Councillor Burden. Are there any errors or omissions? All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next item concerns tonight's agenda. I'd like to call for an approval of the agenda. Are there any errors or omissions? Move in a second, or moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Beale. I'll get there. It's just the new year. I'm getting there. All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. We have one presentation this evening. I'm going to ask him to come to the front and sorry, it's Staff Sergeant Mark Peltier, Commander of the RCMP Oceanside Detachment. So welcome, Mark. Happy New Year. And you're making a presentation regarding traffic enforcement, and I'm sure that some members of council will have some questions for you. So you've got the floor. Turn the microphone on and go right ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me this evening. So I just brought the quick statistics here from 2016 compared to 2015 here on our traffic enforcement. In 2015, we had about 1,366 traffic contacts, that either violation ticket or notice and orders. And for 2016, we're down about to 1,165. So it's about 200 less. What the issue we're having here is we only have one member in our traffic section at this time. Manpower issues, we have to maintain what's going on the watch first, and then we deal with the traffic enforcement on the other end. So that affects us. We try to get the traffic, the GD members, which are the general duty members, out on the road as much as they can to help out with the traffic section. But of course, with other duties or domestics coming in or anything like that, they have to respond to that before dealing with traffic. So, and also we have, if I'm just looking at the theft from motor vehicles has decreased, and the theft of motor vehicles has also decreased. We went from 33 in 2015 to 27. Which is encouraging because, you know, this is the thefts from vehicle. This would affect most of the clients here in the Parksville-Qualicum area. We've had a drop in our IRPs. That's the 90-day fail. We went from 22 to 11. So either that's a good sign for people not out there drinking and driving, or the fact that we don't have enough enforcement out there as well. But one thing that did go up is our motor vehicle accidents. We went from 136 in 2015 to 175. Keep in mind also, maybe with the weather that we had, the snowy conditions, that didn't help, because we were at one point we were hitting 4 or 5 accidents every morning here that was just killing us. So that is basically it just for the traffic enforcement part of things. We definitely could use more traffic members, but that's also quite a bit of money. That's you're talking over $100,000 a member. So if we wanted to have a 5-man unit, that's over like $500,000. So I know we just can't afford that right now.
Thank you. Questions for Staff Sergeant Peltier from members of council? Councillor Oates.
Thank you very much for your presentation. So how does your department prioritize where to target traffic enforcement?
We will take more or less, if there's numerous accidents at a certain intersection or whatever, we'll try to target that. And of course, if the public are calling in and saying, on my street, there's speeding going on. So we just put that in the order, okay? If you've got 10 streets that have been called in, we'll get the traffic member. He'll be notified that such street, street A, street D, and he will attend there as trying as best he can to hit those locations.
Because just right around Christmas time there, I noticed that there was some enforcement on Chestnut Street. I presume that's because of the complaints that have come in from the public based on your answer that you just gave. Would you have any knowledge of how many complaints your department gets with respect to speeding on the Island Highway within the boundaries of Parksville?
The exact number, no, I do not.
But it does happen.
There's speeding all over town. I know that I do, seeing that I'm driving an unmarked vehicle, if I've got time, I will stop in the school zones, and I can tell you right now, there are people speeding, and most of the speeders in the school zones are parents. But if you're going at any other times that the kids are in class, those school zones are atrocious. Like, it's 30 kilometers, and I'm getting people doing 70, 80 kilometers through a school zone.
I've observed similar. The reason I have an interest in this is because this has been a topic that's become pretty relevant to us as a council lately. It's been expressed as a concern about the different things that possibly we should be doing as a council to reduce the speed on the highway portion that runs through Parksville here in town. Any changes we would contemplate probably are in the infrastructure type things, and they come at an incredible cost to the taxpayer. Is there any opportunity for the enforcement be increased down there so that we're not forced with changing road structures or infrastructure projects down there? By your own admission, there's a lot of speeding here in town. Is there not any way that we cannot, with our current resources, up the enforcement level?
We can do our best, but like I say, the traffic mayor, if there's an accident, he's called away from doing the speeding enforcement to head to the accident scene. We are lucky we do have the provincial unit in town that are based out of our building, even though they do go all the way from Tofino to Campbell River and Nanaimo. They are based here, so as they're heading to their locations, or if they are doing traffic enforcements on the main highway here, because they're not a city resource, they're like a provincial. So, but at least by being in our office, they do come in contact with speeders here in town, which helps us out.
Just one final note, thank you very much to you and your staff for what you do.
Thank you.
Councillor Beal.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Your Worship. I'm curious to know, if you do know, have any of the incidences or near incidences involved pedestrians or cyclists? I think in addition to concern, well, it is about public safety and trying to slow down some of these streets, but particularly interested in any stats you have with pedestrians and cyclists.
As far as I know, we've had no cyclist accidents that I know of. No traffic members approached me and said, "Oh, we got a cyclist that's been hit." And I'm not sure if we've had any pedestrians. I know we've had no fatalities so far this year that I know of, that I've been told. Anyways, here in the city of Parksville.
Thank you. And just to follow up, something that I notice in town and is of concern to me and to some residents is the number of cyclists who are not following the rules of the road for cyclists, and how that can compound problems. So, but from what I'm hearing, you don't really have the people power to enforce the drivers on the road, let alone the cyclists. Is that correct?
That's correct. I know that we will be putting out our bike patrol there this summer, and with that, we'll be able to hit those cyclists as best we can with, if they're doing infractions and all that, no helmets, crossing the wrong way, stuff like that.
Councillor Burton and Councillor Pack.
Thanks very much for your statistics. You mentioned that you only had one member assigned to traffic. Is that a result of not having a full detachment, or is that a priority level assessment?
Upon my arrival, we only have 5 members per watch, and we only had one traffic member designated as the traffic member. So I'm just wondering why that is, and I guess you just don't have the money. We don't have the money to get the 4 or 5 more members in that unit. I can't take members off general duty to go into the traffic unit.
That's okay. So that was the next part of my question. Why can't you take members off of general duty to go into traffic?
Well, a prime example, just yesterday we did a search warrant on a residence here in Parksville, and that was members from the watch that located a large quantity of heroin, guns, cocaine in this residence, and that was an all-day affair for those 4 members there, plus attending the other calls that were coming in. So had I've had 1 or 2 members from general duty into traffic, that wouldn't have happened, that seizure yesterday.
That's scary to know, but at the same time, you just told us that a number of the general duty type incidents have decreased, such as theft from vehicle and break-ins and those sorts of things. So on an ongoing basis, aside from what happened yesterday, is there any way to increase the traffic on a per day basis when they're not required for general duty?
All the members are advised to saying, if you're just out and about, do some traffic enforcement, and they're aware of that, and they're trying to do their best as they can. But if they're setting up for some kind of traffic enforcement, they can get called away to another call. So
you're probably guessing by now that it's somewhat of a priority for us.
Oh, for sure. Okay.
Thank you.
I can't recall the last time the Oceanside Detachment got another officer. I think it's been a while. Mrs. Comas, I can't recall in the recent history when we've given another officer to the detachment. On your books, following up on the questions that you've been asked this evening, when you talk about you're short in the traffic sector, what would be an ideal component in the traffic, maximum, minimum? What would be the ideal? You've got 1 now. What would be the minimum ideal number of traffic officers?
Ideally, it would be a corporal in charge with 4 constables in that unit. Ideally.
Ideally.
In the perfect world.
What would be the minimum that could be acceptable?
Well, we're down to 1. That is the minimum. So.
No, more than 1. Minimum more than 1. 2? 3?
3 at least.
Okay. Okay, who had their hand up? Councillor Patterson, and then we'll go to Councillor Burton. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Staff Sergeant Pelchier. I think this is your first seat at our table.
Yes, it is.
So we welcome you to the community. And I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer this question or whether it'll be staff directed, but when you talk about the fact that the average is 100,000 per another sergeant or staff member, and that. So traffic calming that we've already been looking at around the table and options and everything for that, and having lights reflect a bit of a slower pace and everything on the Island Highway, and some of those speeding signals and everything that we have that mark what the speed limits are going, and that, are those helpful, do you think? And I guess my question is, what's the best use of taxpayers' money? And that, is it another person in your detachment? Is it calming measures? What? I'm not sure if anyone wants to check in on that one. I know that a new signal light is anywhere between $50,000 and $120,000.
Very expensive. All those, the signals, the lights, that's awesome. We need more of those for sure. And like I say, we'll try to do the more enforcement that we can to slow the vehicles coming through town. And that's always seems to be the problem, because the people are either racing through there, right through downtown. And I'm always walking up and down on that highway there, and I'm going, whoa, these people are just flying through here. And then you go up on the inland highway where it's 120. I'm going, I don't know why it's 120, but...
Definitely.
So that's another story.
So just a quick little follow-up, or one of my sessions as Coffee with Council, someone brought forth some signage and everything from Europe, where they have big posted on the roadway coming into your community what the speed limit is. A big 50 kilometers per hour type thing right on the road, rather than a sign. That's, because they're tend to just get lost as you're whizzing through town and everything. Have you seen those in other communities at all?
Not that I recall.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Burton?
I'm not sure if this is something that I should be asking you or maybe staff, but we receive revenue from traffic enforcement. Is that correct? I'm seeing yes. How much revenue do we receive?
Yes, Your Worship, through to the councillor, it's about $100,000 a year.
So if we doubled our enforcement, we could get another 100,000 and pay for another member? Pardon me? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions from members of council, we're going to let Staff Sergeant go, because I don't think you're off duty yet, or are you? No, you're never off duty. Well, thanks very much for coming. Thanks for the update, and be safe. And I would say something very politically incorrect, but I won't. But I'll tell you privately. Okay. All right. Now, we have 3 delegations this evening, and the first one is the Parksville and District Historical Society with an update to request approval to hold another farmers market season at the museum, and to request the approval to hold a Gaskis festival at the museum. So David Haynes is here. I don't see Peter. Is Peter not here? Okay, well, you got somebody else? Welcome. So you have 10 minutes. Please proceed and give us your presentation.
Well, thank you for having us here. Yes, I thought I would outline, first of all, why we're here. We wanted to provide an update to the museum and the society. It's been a while since we've been here. I'm the new president. Leona Matt beside me is our new vice president. Merrill Oliver is our other vice president. We have our secretary is Liz Holm. Betty Petrie is behind me, and she's our treasurer. And we have 4 trustees, as well as 2 paid staff. All of our executive are volunteers, and we want you to understand that the museum virtually is run on volunteer input. We're dedicated to the continued collection, research, and conservation of artifacts and archival material that represent Parksville and its district and the past. There's a lot of area in Nanu's, Hilliers, Coombs. We cover a lot of those collections as well. We've saved 8 heritage buildings from destruction, and we continue to maintain those. Last year we had to spend a lot of money because one of the roofs was about to cave in. It just had been built shoddily, and after 100 years it was about to go. One of the buildings was leaning over. So we fixed those. We have extensive archives, historical photographs, newspapers, and they're regularly used by researchers. We have produced several books, some videos, and calendars. And to that end, we have some calendars for those of you who would like them. And we have 8 of them. These are the last 8 of our collection. So if you put your hand up, Betty will come around and give you one after the session. Okay, good.
Politicians love free stuff.
Oh, good. Well, we don't have a lot, but we'll give you what we can. Where we're going, we're developing our main hall exhibits to tell the district's history more effectively. We've been working on the idea of what's the story of Parksville. And unfortunately, there are about 10 or 12 different stories that we have to just choose from. Some are fishing, some are logging, some are farming, there's many, many different ones here. We're developing the youth and children's programs as a potential day camp in the summer. We're launching the historical digital exhibition and tour this year, and it's using innovative technology where you can take your smartphone and you'll be able to see what's actually there. Where we're going, we have painting classes and exhibits. We have pottery demonstrations and exhibitions. We have blacksmithing, both artistic and Japanese-style blade making. We actually have a person who studied in Japan for that. We have gardening at the museum with organic master garden classes. We have woodwork, both joinery and bodging. You can ask me what that is later. Felt making, quilting, soap making, and we're even thinking about cooking. Our outreach is good for seniors engagement. Many of our active volunteers are seniors. We've engaged with seniors through capturing their memories and experiencing growing up in the district through Oral History Project documentary, which Leon is actually primarily responsible for. We're developing school programs. We're working with community partners such as Inclusion Parksville, Forward House, Aerosmith Community Justice, the Brant Festival, Aerosmith Naturalists, and the Vancouver Island University. The community impact, social networking. Generally, I'm responsible for this one. The Parksville Museum, we have 454 followers there. The Parksville Farmers Market Facebook page, 1,277 followers. The Urban Farm School group, 105 followers. And remembering World War I, 100 years ago today, what happened. And every day we've been documenting that, even since before the beginning of World War I, 100 years ago. The farmers market itself, we had an average of 29 vendors per market. We support local food producers and local shopping initiatives. We have the visitors that we had for 2016 were 10,779. Our total monetary donations are $3,327, and that's a 700% increase since 2012. Many visitors discover the museum through the market, and they return during the week to explore it more fully. By the way, the photographs that are included here are local people from this area. Sorry? Who lived here, yeah. 100 years ago, the Parksville District was one of the primary food producers for Vancouver Island. To rekindle our food security, we've developed the following initiatives to this end. Oops. Too fast. The Parksville Museum Urban Farm School, we do basic gardening classes. We have Master Organic Gardening certification classes as well, and that's run through Gaia College and the Canadian Organic Gardeners Association. I took part in that one and actually got a master's certificate as well. We received a grant from the Ministry of Agriculture, and that's partnered with the Coombs Farmers Institute and the Qualicum Community Education and Wellness Society. Our next course that we're offering through Gaia College is Growing Food, and it starts in February 5th, goes to October 14th, and it's 18 sessions. Finances. Well, the revenue, it includes admissions, grants, classes, donations, markets, memberships, museum products, fundraising, and you have the amount down below. Expenses, payroll, operational expenses, and capital improvements. The difference, okay, we made it small so that you couldn't read it well. Oh, darn. Well, at least the deficit is shrinking yearly. It's actually, we're saving $20,000 a year since 2013. So we've actually reduced it by $20,000 each year by our initiatives that we've done. The permission request. We're planning for 2 large events in 2017, and they require the city's permission. First is the Farmers Market, and then Gargiste. The Friday Farmers Market, its proposed dates are May 26th to September 15th. We have 16 markets in total. The Gargiste Wine Festival, it actually means garage, and it comes, or a small place for production, and it's French in origin. It's voted one of the top 3 wine festivals in the world by the Toronto Star newspaper. The wine tasting event is with food, chefs, and local wines. Only winemakers that produce less than 2,000 cases per year are permitted to be in this, and it's a juried show primarily from Vancouver Island. It's a closed event with prepaid tickets, security and attendance at the gates and on the grounds, and we expect between 200 and 500 attendees. The organizers are Terry Stone, Terry David Mulligan, and Peter Cavaro. We'll be advertising on radio, social media, TV, posters, and other print media across BC, and it's anticipated to be a significant fundraiser for the Parksville Museum and community, and we hope to make it an annual event. So a quick review. I'll give you an update. I talked a little bit about our finances, but we do need permission to run the Farmers Market and the Gargiste Festival.
Thanks very much. So the Farmers Market, May 26th to September 15th.
Yep.
And the, how do you pronounce that again?
Gargiste.
Gargiste, that's on July 30th. That's a Sunday, right?
I think it's a Saturday.
Is it a Saturday?
What?
Okay. What about the events you were having on a Sunday night this past year?
Sunday night.
Wasn't there some sort of another type of market that you were having?
Friday night.
Friday?
We had
just Friday night? It's just Friday night?
nights only.
Okay. All right, thank you.
We have had classes there, and the classes are they were happening on Wednesday and Saturday as well, and those were the Organic Master Gardener classes.
Okay, thank you. And by the way, I read your annual report recently. Councillor Salter sent it to me, and it was a very, very good report. Congratulations on all the good work you're doing.
Thank you.
Members of council, do we have questions for this delegation? Okay. Thank you. We do. Councillor Oates.
This is directed to staff. With respect to the hosting the Gargiste Festival, is there any barriers to council approving a motion to do that tonight, or would staff need an opportunity to review the request because of the unique nature of that event?
Yes, Your Worship. If council wishes to grant permission for a special event permit for the event, you can certainly do that. With respect to the serving of alcohol and all of that, that's provincial jurisdiction, so those approvals would have to come from the province rather than the city.
I move that we grant approval. I move that we grant approval to host the Gargiste Festival at the museum on July 29th, 2017.
Are you including the farmers market in that as well, or just that?
We want to deal with the farmers market. Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. So I would like to make a motion that we approve the farmers market for this year for the Museum Society. Yes.
I'd just like to comment that I received a calendar for Christmas from a friend and love it, so I'll pass. But it's a great read.
And Your Worship, if I could, that's all right. I have 4 or 5, I think, that I've given out. And it is a wonderful, wonderful calendar, and thank you, Leona, for putting that together. One of my staff members, I gave it to her today for her birthday present, and she has family that is in the calendar, and yeah, it's just amazing to young lady, 23, and you don't know what you're missing at that age until you start going through and going, oh, wow. And so thank you. So thank you.
Thank you once again. Okay, our next delegation is the Access Oceanside Association update from Sandra Hobson to inform Council on the recent activities of Access Oceanside Association, particularly on the Emergency Preparedness Project for Persons with Disabilities. Welcome, Sharon. You have 10 minutes.
Your Worship, Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for this opportunity. My name is Sandra Hobson and I chair Access Oceanside Association. Access Oceanside Association is a committee of the City, so I'm here to give you an update on our work during 2016 and our plans for 2017. Our mission is to raise awareness and provide education while working toward a community of inclusion for all to live, work, and play in a barrier-free community. I want to take this opportunity to thank Councillor Teresa Patterson for her support during the past couple of years and welcome Councillor Kim Burden as our new Council liaison. We really appreciate that support and liaison and information conduit. 2016 was a busy year. We had a wheel walkabout in Qualicum Beach. We've had several here in Parksville. The one in Qualicum Beach generated a large turnout. Mayor Lefebvre, thank you for challenging Mayor Westbrook. Both mayors participated, as well as a number of Qualicum Beach councillors and members of their planning department. And the success of the event was demonstrated when we received an invitation to meet with Mayor Westbrook several weeks later, and he outlined plans of how the town will address the accessibility issues that had been identified over the next couple of years. Emergency preparedness is a big issue in this part of the world, as I learned when I first moved to Vancouver Island. All citizens are urged to be prepared for an emergency or a natural disaster, and there's information on the city website to assist, but there is no information specific to the needs of persons with disabilities. In general, persons with disabilities are more vulnerable to adverse effects of emergencies and are less prepared. The lack of preparation may be due to physical inability, financial inability, and or lack of knowledge. Access Oceanside Association applied for 2 grants to undertake a project on emergency preparedness for persons with disabilities, one from the British Columbia Plan H Fund and one from the Qualicum Parksville Community Foundation. We were unsuccessful with the provincial grant, but we received $1,000 from the Community Foundation. To date, we have completed a review and synthesis of both research and grey literature on the topic and have prepared drafts of a master report as well as 6 sub-reports. These sub-reports are specific to persons with disabilities and their families, to emergency planners, to first responders, to health professionals who are key in getting persons with disabilities to engage in preparedness, to businesses and employers who may not have thought about the special needs of customers or employees with disabilities, and to nursing care facilities. Our next step is to meet with the emergency coordinators in the region to share information, ask questions, and request cooperation in holding some public meetings in Parksville and in Qualicum Beach for persons with disabilities and their families, and perhaps if we can be invited with local businesses, let's say the chambers of commerce and so on. In terms of other activities, we've answered a number of inquiries from residents about accessibility issues. We also received an inquiry this summer from Tourism Oceanside with a request for a map showing accessible parking spots. There is no such map at this time, and AOA will be working with the City of Parksville to help create one for our community. We responded to requests for feedback from the engineering department in the city regarding changes they made in sidewalk design between the different phases of Temple Street, and we were very positive about the changes that they have made. And we've been present at 2 public meetings regarding the city's transportation master plan to highlight specific concerns of persons with disabilities. In December, I met with Cheryl Dill from the Beach Fest Committee. This is a wonderful event for residents and visitors, and Access Oceanside Association suggested a number of ideas to enhance accessibility of Beach Fest. For example, allowing a day near the end, a special day where visitors with visual impairments could come and see sculptures through touch and through perhaps guided commentary, and perhaps an accessible water day. There was one held in Nanaimo where an accessible rowboat and an accessible paddle boat were available for persons with disabilities to try. I know that for the first time ever, including pre-disability, I used a paddleboard, and it was quite an amazing experience. Our plans for 2017 include continuing to work with Beach Fest to enhance accessibility, and one of the Access Oceanside Association members has been invited to sit at their committee. We will continue to work with the city on the map showing accessible parking spots, and to continue with the project on emergency preparedness for persons with disabilities, ultimately posting the information we generate on our website, and perhaps with links to various emergency preparedness websites on the city, the Town of Qualicum Beach, RDN, etc. And that leads me to my final purpose in coming here this evening, which is to bring you a request related to our emergency preparedness project. And that is that the City of Parksville host the Access Oceanside Association website. It consumes valuable and extremely scarce resources for AOA to pay for its own web hosting. As a committee of the city, we do not qualify for certain grants and fundraising initiatives, and we believe that such support would be both appropriate and very helpful in ensuring the sustainability of Access Oceanside Association. Thank you for your attention and for considering this request.
Well, thanks very much, Sharon, and thank you again for all the work that you do. Before I get to the specifics of your request, have you spoken with Aaron Rogers, who's our emergency preparedness officer? Aaron Dawson. I'm thinking of the Green Bay Packers quarterback.
Yes, they have my request for a meeting, and they were meeting, and I expect to hear this week a potential date. Okay. They also informed me that we have been invited to be present at the emergency preparedness fair or whatever that's happening in the spring, expo that's happening in the spring. I just heard that last week.
Okay. Any members of council have questions for Ms. Hobson? Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you very much for the presentation. I will say I love the idea of the final day of Beach Fest, allowing the visually impaired to see the sand sculptures. I think it's a wonderful idea. So I'm glad you're continuing to work with Cheryl Dill and the Beach Fest. I am curious, it's a question probably more for staff at this point, but regarding the request to host the website, and I'll be honest, I have some concerns because there are a number of nonprofit organizations in the area that are connected with the city as well that do have to provide for their websites. But from staff, what would the cost be? Are there limitations? And I believe that our website will be getting some work, so I don't know what the implications would be for the city.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Beal, if Council could refer that request back to staff, because we don't have the costs off the top of my head or what that's involved or content management. It raises a lot of questions. So probably better to refer it to staff so we could look at it.
Do you want to make that motion?
Yes, I'd like to make the motion that be referred to staff for further information and implications.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Burden. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And is Jim Pimlett going to come with his rowboat this summer?
We hope.
Okay, good. We'll talk about that later. Bye-bye. Our next presentation is from the green shirts that I can see. I guess you're the ones. Sherry Plummer and Judith Kemp to provide background information on the incentive to reduce or ban plastic bags in our communities and to summarize the discussion from the January 6th, 2017 information meeting. So Sherry, welcome. Welcome to your colleague, Judith. You have 10 minutes.
Yes. Good evening, councillors and your worship. My name is Sherry Plummer, and with me is Judith Kemp. We're here this evening as representatives of Communities Protecting Our Coast. CPOC is a local environmental group concerned with protecting our oceans. You know, our oceans are in peril, through warming, through overfishing, through acidification, and through pollution. And it's pollution that we'll talk to you about tonight. One of our initiatives is to build awareness and action on plastic bags. Plastic creates problems for our environment, from the extraction of raw materials, through the creation of products, and then through the disposal of each product. As we become more aware of the consequences of plastic waste on our environment, we want to mitigate our environmental harm and create a positive result. Tonight I'll talk about some of the specific challenges that plastic bags present to our community and to our environment. I'll ask a request of you, the City Council. I'll also give you some approaches for addressing our requests that other communities have found helpful. So first let's take a look at the categories of plastic bags. The first ones are the big baddies. That's petroleum-based non-biodegradable plastic bags. They eventually degrade into smaller, more brittle pieces, and then they are ingested by wildlife, both on land and in the ocean, and it causes them harm in so many ways. The consumed plastic can get into the digestive tracts of our animals, particularly marine life, and eventually into our food system. There's our sad turtle. And here's how. Plastic bag fragments in the ocean can absorb pollutants like PCBs and PAHs, which are known to be hormone-disrupting chemicals. When the marine organisms consume plastics from our oceans, then these hormone-disrupting chemicals make their way up through the food chain and into humans when we eat fish and other marine organisms. And then we have another sad picture. Animals can also become entangled in plastic. If they don't eat the plastic, they get tangled up in it. So here's some facts about single-use plastic bags. To produce 9 plastic bags, it takes the equivalent energy to drive a car 1 kilometer. And apparently the typical use of a life of plastic bag is 12 minutes. The actual cost of a bag is 3.5 cents, which of course is added to the cost of our purchase, but they're free, right? We also pay for their cleanup, whether in paying people to pick up rubbish or the cost of them in landfills, and some estimates are about $90 per person per year. When we add the environmental cost of extraction, production, and disposal, along with the cost of wildlife, they're not free at all. Now, we also have biodegradable bags, and this category has 2 different types of bags in it: the real biodegradable bags and the compostable bags. Unfortunately, the most common type of biodegradable bag, and you might hear about this in supermarkets around here, it's still a petroleum byproduct. And it's the way that it degrades that causes companies to claim that it's biodegradable, because it comes almost dust-like. And we found out, like last night, from Dr. Sarah Dudas, that dust-like stuff is really nanoplastic. It's very tiny, but it's still very harmful. The dust is inhaled and swallowed by organisms, causing a multitude of problems similar to the ones already mentioned. But it does look like bags have disappeared. And then we have the real compostable bag. This is the biodegradable bag, and it's frequently made from corn. It's a compostable bag, but to achieve breakdown, it needs extremely hot composting, otherwise it won't decompose. And that's about 50 degrees centigrade heat that's needed to degrade them. Compostable bags come with other challenges as well. They can't be recycled with other plastics. They're number 7, so they're not compatible with the recycling process used with the true plastics. Recycling pickup apparently does not like plastic bags of any kind, not compostable, biodegradable, or regular, as they get caught on the machinery and jam it. When compostable bags go into the landfill, if they decompose at all, one of the products that compostable bags create is methane because of the airless decomposition. And methane is very, very harmful, even more harmful than carbon dioxide. Compostable bags are not as strong as plastic bags, yet they feel stiff and they're noisy. And the noisiness backfired on Pepsi-Cola when they tried to use compostable bags for their Sun Chips. People didn't like the noise. So lots of problems with bags of all kinds. So if plastic bags are a problem, what can we do? The United Nations Environmental Program Secretariat has recommended a ban on all plastic bags globally. I think we've got a long ways to go. Starting with a specific category like grocery store bags is an approach that many municipalities and even countries have used as their first bite at reducing plastic bags in their communities. And more countries and municipalities are banning bags each year. Some governments feel that it's just too hard to outright ban plastic bags, but they do want to begin a program of reduction. A tax or fee that consumers pay on each plastic bag that they take from the grocery store has been effective. Also, a reusable bag credit has worked well. Ireland took this tax approach in 2002, and the result was an approximately 90% decrease in the consumer use of plastic bags. Other countries and municipalities are considering this approach. In 2007, Leaf Rapids, Manitoba became Canada's first town to ban plastic bags. They imposed a fine of $1,000 on any store that continued to hand them out. That seems a bit harsh. But they started with a 3-cent tax on each bag, and then as consumer support grew, they moved to the day fine on the stores. And Tofino, we've got a local one here, they stopped routinely handing out plastic straws, and they're providing biodegradable alternatives if a straw is requested. And businesses are cooperating. 88% of the rubbish gathered during Tofino's garbage cleanup of Chesterman Beach was plastic. Businesses who take a leadership role, such as Bill at Thrifty's and Coombs Market, say the customers are okay. They get the problem and there isn't much pushback. And Judy, did you want to tell us about a specific one?
So Sherry's mentioned communities in Canada that have looked at banning plastic bags, and it was interesting to find that Victoria councillors, 2 councillors in Victoria brought a proposal to council in 2015, which passed, and the proposal was that the Victoria City look into the process of banning plastic bags, and it passed 7-1. Taking a peek at the rest of the world, there's some surprising things happening. Botswana has a total ban on plastic bags. In Ireland, which Sherry mentioned, 2002, they started their ban. They've been pretty successful, and there's a lot of professionally conducted studies on what's taken place in Ireland. That being said, change in human behavior is created in the pocket. The change created in Ireland, they attributed to the 0.26 euro cent per bag charge at the checkout counter. And lots of times when that charge is imposed, that money seems to go into environmental funds.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, when a municipality decides to begin to address the plastic problem, citizens become engaged in conversation. Plastic bags are obvious to all of us, both in the store and then as rubbish throughout our community. We all know about single-use plastic bags, even if we don't know all the different ways that they cost our community and our environment and our wildlife. So here you go, Town Council. You are the role as gatekeepers of change. We understand you have a role to be a gatekeeper of the types of change that occur in our town, from architectural styles, heights of buildings, to the way garbage is disposed of. And Beans to Bones, as a part of our garbage disposal process for our town, indicates that you are interested in guiding change that has a positive environmental impact. So here's what CPOC is asking you, City Council, to take steps towards the elimination of plastic bags in our city. This is a big ask, and we're aware of many of the challenges implicit in this request. As the conversation begins throughout our town as a result of the screening of Plastic Ocean, which I think you have the poster with you, it will be an incentive if the city would give us a little bit of help and create a model for other towns. So Plastic Ocean is on January 22nd, and it's going to be at the Knox United Church. Doors open at 1 p.m. and it starts at 1:30. We have Arthur Black coming across from Salt Spring Island. He'll be hosting and moderating our event, and donations at the door will be the only price of admission, because we're interested in changing public attitudes, not in profit. The Plastic Oceans itself is from Los Angeles, actually, and they spent 4 years in making this film. It's been taken at 20 locations in the ocean where they have had divers go down and check out the state of the ocean, and it's a riveting film. Last night, we went over to see Dr. Sarah Dudas, and she is the Canada Research Chair at the Shellfish Research Station at Vancouver Island University. You know, I think there's a tendency to think not in our backyard or not in our ocean. Maybe this is in third world countries. Sarah will tell you differently. Right now, she's currently supervising a project tagging some 3,000 shellfish in the Salish Sea to study the impacts on microplastics on marine food chains, and it will be interesting to see the results. They already have results on manila clams, and there are microplastics in the clams here. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you for that very, very in-depth presentation. Any questions for the delegation from members of council? Councillor Beale and then Councillor Salter.
I'd just like to thank you very much for the presentation, and I think I mentioned earlier I have the date of the film on my calendar at home, so I am looking forward to seeing it. You know, I just would like to say that I do think it's an important topic that you know, we ignore at our peril. I mean, in the greater or. At the same time, right now, I think that the council is looking forward to spending some time to look at strategies, and I'm just, it's a timing thing in terms of not just priorities, but availability of staff time. But I do have a couple of questions. I'm also wondering whether it be here or in other communities, has there been conversation with, for instance, chambers of commerce or individual grocery stores or owners, or, you know, certainly I see everyone around town that, you know, they've got their bag when they go to Thrifty's and also many other places. And with such models, has it been easy to approach individual store owners or the Parksville Downtown Business Association or other organized groups like that?
The answer is yes. Yes, we have been in touch, and we did have a meeting on January 6th with some of the folks that are stakeholders. Anything else regarding that?
Well, we also have been invited by the RDN as a group to offer input into their solid waste management phase 2 plan, and so think, Sherry and I, as you know, Mary, both have a background in education. So at this point, we know we have, if we take on this initiative, if as a follow-up to the film, it sparks enough interest that there's members in the community who are willing to put the hours in, we will integrate it also with the schools, and we would do surveys and certainly propose whatever we can to support the businesses and what they're already doing, because we realize there's lots going on already.
And just further to that, Ann Skipsey, who's a councillor in Qualicum Beach, has been in touch with the business associations and the chambers of commerce.
I just want to follow up to share something that I saw in another community. It was in Chilliwack, a lovely idea. In the bookstore there, if you decline the bag, no plastic bag or no bag at all, then you had the option, you were given a chip, and you could put it into the local organization of your choice. So there were 4 jars lined up. One was for the, the shelter, the SPCA, the so on, and the equivalent money that was saved by not having to distribute a bag would go to those organizations. And in the previous year, I think they'd raised, beyond thousands to go to these different organizations. It really made it a fun way to think about making that choice.
And I think it's innovations like that that we're looking for with our working group.
Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your presentation. It is important. Certainly plastic bags, I don't think it would take much to convince any one of us or really anyone in the room. I think we all understand how dangerous plastic is to the environment and marine life, and really all of the animals and even ourselves. I know that there's a plastic, it's called a plastic island, floating out there right now that, it is almost impossible for us to really deal with anymore. And when you talk about Tofino and on the West Coast, excuse me, there's plastic still floating in from the Fukushima disaster. So it's this ongoing constant issue that, is washing up on the beaches over and over again. For as far as plastic bags, at least in our community, I have to say I'm really impressed with how our community has been addressing. I know there are grocery stores who don't have plastic, and there's also pharmacies and drugstores who actually have no bags. So you get to carry out your stuff in your arms, or you bring your own bag in. And I think that's a really good way of addressing it. I'm not sure that council, that for us to make a bylaw or for us to come up with some kind of a law in our community, how would we even manage that at any rate? How could we manage that? I'm not sure. I hear what you say that happened in Victoria, but I think it's the business community that has to make that decision and turn that corner. As well, it's us as shoppers, as people who are out there buying these items that need to go in there with our own bag rather than expecting a plastic bag when we leave. So I think there's a whole lot of educating that needs to be done, aside from council trying to come up with some kind of a bylaw. It's something that I think we need to think about and consider.
I just mentioned that when I was reading about Ireland, and there's lots to read about other countries as well, but it's quite a success story there. They also based their success on public engagement, and one of the ways that they did that was a lot of promotion. And even, the idea that Mary just suggested is huge promotion. I talked to some high school kids today and said, would you guys be interested in helping us with the surveys? Could you stand outside some of our stores and survey who's carrying out cloth bags, who's carrying out plastic, or who's carrying baskets, and is it males or females, what age group? We could come up with a spreadsheet, do some really interesting surveys on a lot of the businesses. And yes, I think when I asked the regional district information about other places in Canada, how it was suggested to me, because of the legislation in British Columbia, both provincial and municipal levels, that it's probably a lot of legislation has to go on in the background prior to a bylaw being passed. So I would think those 3 communities in Manitoba, for example, that have banned plastic bags must have had a lot going on
Yeah.
before they got to that step. Thank you.
I do have a follow-up, though.
Quick follow-up, yes?
And just one more. There can be a voluntary ban or a voluntary phasing out of plastic bags. And there was one community that actually had 2,500 citizens come with a petition to their council. And that council decided to ban plastic bags formally.
Thank you. So just with a follow-up, you did mention corn, using corn as an alternative for bags, but then you said there was something about getting it into the landfill or something. Was there something about that was...
Yeah, that's really problematic because what happens after to those bags is they're put into a landfill, and it's anaerobic because they're pressed down, and so they don't decompose properly. And if they do decompose, if they're closer to the top, methane is what they produce when they decompose. So I'm not sure if that's such a good idea. We're almost better off with plastic than methane.
Any further questions from members of the delegation? Thank you very, very much. We'll see you on the 22nd, Knox United Church. Thank you. Okay, members of council, we have 4 pieces of correspondence tonight, which are listed in your reports. The first one is to be received is from the Honourable Catherine McKenna, amendment to the migratory birds regulation. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Salter. All those in favour? Opposed? Thank you. The next item is the Mana Homeless Society request for a one-time donation. I sent everybody an email today. This donation has been agreed to last week by the RDN board, so it is no longer we'll be paying, but we won't be paying $5,000. You didn't get the email? I'm sorry. I hope everybody else got it. Yeah. Okay. I sent it out. So. Okay. Councillor Burden. Okay, so I'm going to call the vote. I don't think there's any point in discussing it. Sure, go ahead.
So I did not get that email. So as all I know is that Mana had requested $5,000 from Parksville. I didn't see that email, and I don't know why I didn't get it. Anyway, so the fact that the regional district are supporting it, why would we not? Qualicum actually supported it. Yes, they did.
No, they didn't. Qualicum, the mayor of Qualicum Beach was at the RDN board last Tuesday night, and the RDN gave Mana Ministries $5,000.
Okay, so I was told that Qualicum gave them $5,000 as well. I met with Robin Campbell.
I haven't heard that. I would be very surprised if they gave them $5,000.
So my feeling is, Mr. Mayor, that the request was to Parksville City requesting $5,000. If they requested it from the regional district, so be it. But they did request from Parksville. I know they requested from Qualicum, and Qualicum did support that. They did receive the $5,000 in December from Qualicum. That's already come and gone. So that request, I believe, is still on the table from Parksville. The request was to Parksville, not the regional district. If they have, that's another.
If you read Mr. Campbell's letter, it's a one-time $5,000 request.
Yes, from Parksville.
He's got the $5,000.
From Parksville.
No, from the RDN.
No, he's requested it.
Do you want to make a motion that Parksville give $5,000 to Mana Ministries?
Well, I would.
Is that where you're going?
That was the request.
Okay, well, you go ahead and make that motion then.
Well, we can't. There's already.
Oh, wait a
some on
minute.
the floor.
Okay. Let's go for a motion to receive. All those in favor? Okay, now you want to make a motion that the City of Parksville give Mana Ministries $5,000.
Yes, I would.
Do I have a seconder for that? Motion fails. Okay. And I'll double check.
I have to say this, though. It's okay that it fails, but I have to say that I did speak to a councillor from Qualicum who wanted me to say, if this happens, shame on Parksville. We sit here and we rub our hands together and we make lip service and we talk about people who are homeless and how we want to help, and yet we do nothing. Parksville is the city who does nothing, even though this Mr. Campbell comes in from Arrington to help people in this city, and Qualicum is supporting helping him help people in this city, and Parksville does nothing but rub our hands together. That's
Councillor Beal and Councillor Oates.
Thank you, and I realize that really the motion didn't go forward, but I would just like to say that I would not be supporting the motion at this time, given that I understand that the request was for emergency assistance, and yes, the RDN has contributed $5,000, and yes, the town of Qualicum Beach has also contributed $5,000, and I read that in their minutes of an emergency special meeting that they held mid-December. And so with $10,000 in hand, I'm thinking that it is no longer an emergency situation, and I would hope that MANA could come forward to us with further information, whether it be through a grants in aid or some other purpose. No, I do not want to suggest that Parksville has no compassion and no interest in providing any support, but I do not believe it's an emergency situation at this time.
Councillor Oates and then Councillor Burden and Councillor Patterson.
Is there anybody from the MANA Society here tonight? Okay, I guess that says a lot. The point I would like to respond to Councillor Salter's assertion that we do nothing, that we sit here and rub our hands. When this request came through, I took the opportunity to inquire of staff of what we actually do for the homeless, and I educated myself. And the mayor made some inquiries about permissive tax exemptions and the things that the city of Parksville actually does to assist the homeless. So perhaps you might want to educate yourself, Councillor Salter, on that as well before you come in here accusing us of doing nothing.
Okay, Councillor Burden.
We've received, this is an interesting debate on a non-motion, but we've received a number of requests for funding, excuse me, over the last, I've only been here for 2 months, so over the last 2 months we've received several requests. And I think we need to possibly take a look at how we manage those requests. We have a grants and aid process, which is probably not really funded adequately. As an observer of council for a long time before I joined you, I've seen a number of requests come out of something called the Council Contingency Fund. And I think that maybe we should, I don't know, refer back to staff to address how we deal with these requests and look at it in a more orderly fashion with a little bit more documentation than a letter and a request, and maybe we can add some money from the Council Contingency Fund to the Grants and Aid Fund and have a process where we're looking at what other requests are being made of other agencies that are similar to the one being made of this council. We can look at the existing financial situation of the organization or the individual making the request. The kinds of things, I know that I sat on the Grants and Aid Committee from the Regional District many years ago, and it was a very in-depth process of making those decisions. And I think that possibly given the increase in the number of requests that we're seeing, that we could look into something along those lines and refine our process so that we can be more accountable to the taxpayer for the dollars that we're providing.
Thank you. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I echo a lot of Councillor Burden's comments. I know that Councillor Greer would definitely not, as he sat around this table, and those of you who know him know that he was very much against the grant and aid program. But I have to just caution and gently remind everyone around the table that emotions run high, and we have to look at requests from a financial standpoint sometimes, and from the requested people, and that having their financials, having the information and everything is vitally important, because as Councillor Salter has said, she believes that, absolutely, that there was money given from Qualicum Beach and that there was money given and everything from the RDN. I also know that our Rotary Club on 2 occasions have. So I think that we have to also remind ourselves to take a step back, don't let emotional, because it is very emotional. And there are so many organizations that this city of Parksville works with, that Mayor Lefebvre mentioned on that in the past, that we do, and that a lot of the people in our community don't know or recognize that there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. And so those are my comments. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Just before I go back to Councillor Salter, I take great exception to what Councillor Salter has said. I'm not going to go over all of the details tonight, but I can tell you that Parksville does more than its share, simply because we have the Oceanside Health Center here in Parksville. We have the cold weather shelter here in Parksville, and Parksville supports the whole issue of dealing with homelessness and poverty and everything else. For example, we're now cleaning up with a hazmat company those areas where people are staying that can't afford to stay indoors or staying outside. We're cleaning those areas up. We're cleaning those under budgets that we didn't have before. We're spending that kind of money. I think we had to clean up before Christmas to the tune of about $650. So we're still on correspondence. So Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with regard to cleanup, actually, MANA have also offered to do the cleanup, even though it's not their issue either. But they also help with cleanup, and they don't have any problem with that. They don't charge. Here's what concerns me. We have no problem passing $13,500 to put up Christmas lights, but we refuse to help people who have no food, no shelter, or who are working poor. And MANA are on the front line. So they're coming down every Saturday on the front line, handing out food, clothing, blankets, whatever is required. We had a crisis. That's why they contacted all of us. There was a crisis. We had an incredibly unexpected cold winter, and people on the streets and people in general, not just people on the streets, were not able to manage or cope with it. And they were not able to get these resources from any other government agency either. It's insidious. So that's all. That this city refuses to assist. I can accept that. I made the motion. It was no. That's okay. But it is disturbing. It's disturbing to me that there's some kind of justification for not helping someone who's in need. And it was you who brought up the Beatitudes. And that's in Beatitudes.
Thank you, Councillor Salter. We're going to move on. We're under correspondence. The next piece of correspondence is from the 1st Parksville Scout Group, and I believe Councillor Beale is going to recluse herself. He's in the Scouts.
I do appreciate that Councillor Oates is very good at helping me learn some of the procedural fine points. I am a volunteer with Scouts, and although I do not receive any money or anything like that, I will recuse myself as I am involved with Scouts.
You didn't know that?
Well, but the other people might not.
Okay. Okay. So this is again for a receipt, Council. We have a request for a one-time contribution of $2,000 to replace stolen equipment be received. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the request? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor to be received? Thank you. That has passed. Any discussion on this particular motion? Councillor Burton.
Not on this particular motion, but I'd like to make a motion based on my comments previously I'd like to make a request of staff first. Is it a complicated process to establish some criteria and parameters beyond what we currently have for the grants and aid program?
Well, it would, basically what you're asking us to do is to review and revise the grants and aid policy, which we can do, but we would prefer some additional guidance from council as to what direction you want those changes to be made in and what type of policy it is that you're looking for. Basically, we advertise twice a year for the grants and aid, and council forms a committee, and we have a criteria, and we request for financial statements from people who make application. And you're correct in your previous statements when you were talking about council's contingency. That is usually the go-to place when we receive one-off requests in and around the grants and aid program, is that those are at council's discretion and the funds come from council's contingency, and that's the way it's been handled in the past. So if you're looking to us to expand the grants and aid program so that we provide criteria that would look after the one-off types of requests that come, we can certainly do that. There's a variety. We would take direction from council as to how you would want us to do that.
So I guess what I'm looking for is a policy that says that we will only give money to outside groups through the grants and aid program, and recognizing that the current grants and aid program, I believe, has a ceiling of $2,500. $5,000. Okay, so $5,000, which is still, we've got requests here that would cover that in one swoop. So looking to, because we'll no longer be giving funding out through the council contingency, which doesn't have any accountability that goes with it, then we would take money from the council contingency in the budget, add it to the grants and aid budget, and make sure that those criteria and the existing criteria may well be adequate. I'm just looking for an end to these kinds of requests in this format, and that they flow through the grants and aid format, which has that criteria established.
Well, staff can certainly do that, and council could pass a motion at any time to restrict grant requests to the grants and aid process, recognizing that those are done twice a year in the spring and the fall. The accountability with respect to the council contingency is the council resolution that accompanies that. So staff don't just take money from council contingency to pay a grant. It requires council's, and that's where the accountability for that comes in. But
and I guess I'm looking for accountability to the taxpayer based on the criteria that exists within the grants and aid program. So how do I word that in a motion?
Are you also making the motion to transfer money from the council contingency into the grants and aid? What am I understanding?
That would be my preference, yes. Because I don't think 5,000 is enough based on what I see coming through the year. And I don't want to cut off the requests. I just want to make sure that they go through a process.
Well, Your Worship, perhaps...
Do we want to deal with this in another format?
Well, I was just going to say that perhaps we could deal with the item of correspondence at hand, and under new business, if you would like to bring forward a motion that gives us direction with respect to that matter, then we can do it then.
So the last piece of correspondence, we want to go get Councillor Beal. Oh, you got a question? Go ahead.
Still on this item. I'd like to make a motion that we grant a one-time contribution of $2,000 to the First Parksville Scout Group. It would have been nice to have been able to get the numbers, seeing they were interested enough to come here tonight, but thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, you want to talk to this particular issue? Councillor Patterson, do you want to talk to the issue of the Boy Scout grant?
I do, in a roundabout way, not so much on the grant or that the equipment was stolen or anything, but because we have people in the audience, I would like to ask a question to them, if with your permission on that. So thank you very much for coming. I know that it's been a long meeting, and you've been awesome sitting there. It's pretty boring in the scheme of everything. But my question is that the equipment was in storage, and that was there no insurance or anything involved in the storage of the equipment?
We did not have insurance, basically on the fact because we're a long-term nonprofit group to pay for the monthly insurance, just costs, most of our insurance, the registration for the kids, most of the liability and stuff.
So just to follow up, Your Worship, and that, not that it's a suggestion or anything in the future, but that would be something that I could get behind, and that is not so much the to replace the equipment type thing, but for coming forward in the future for requests for or something to that effect for insurance and that. And just from a personal standpoint, is there anything, while the press is here and everything, that you're still lacking in donations or in equipment, and that we could maybe help get the word out for you?
Basically what we're doing is looking for money to get our tents back and basically stop to get these kids to get the program kicking off for the rest of the year. I want to obviously do it the same level as last year with the camps and everything else. Right now it's all about tents and stuff.
Okay. I'm sure that I can speak to Councillor Beale and get some more information. Thank you again.
Just to comment to the Boy Scouts, depending on the discussion, how the next discussion is going to go under new business, you also have the ability to apply for grants and aid, and I think that's where this thing is going. It's not so much that it's these one-off requests that we get. So if we can regulate the grants and aid process, you have the opportunity. The first grants and aid is coming up for what, April? March?
In March. The advertising will begin in February.
So we'll, well, depending on where this goes, we'll have that discussion just on the grants and aid, and Councillor Beale, I'm sure, will inform you. But I would look to apply through grants and aid. Okay? Thank you. Okay, the last piece of correspondence we're being asked to receive is the Community in Blooms. We've been invited. Do you want to get Councillor Beale back in here? We've been invited to participate in the Canada 150 category of the 2017 National Edition of Communities in Bloom. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? To be received. Any discussion on the overall motion? Councillor Burton.
Yes, I spent, I can't remember how many years, 3 or 4 years on the previous Communities in Bloom committee. And as much as it's an awesome program and provides us with an opportunity to really display some of the really good things that go on in our community, it is very time consuming. It's very heavily laden on human resources, and it's very kind of them to offer this to us, but I really don't think it's a good idea at this time.
I tend to agree. It's an awful lot of work, and we've got our work cut out for us in terms of the 150.
And Peter Crawshaw retired.
Pardon me?
And Peter Crawshaw retired.
Okay. Any further comments on this from members of council? Okay. Thank you. So the first report that we have is the 2016-2020 amended financial plan. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Patterson, seconded by Councillor Burton. Okay. And Mr. Butterworth, I'm going to ask you to give us the background issue regarding the 2016-2020 amended financial plan. And then I'm going to ask if there's any member in the gallery who'd like to provide comment to council. Mr. Butterworth.
Thank you, Your Worship. Don't have a PowerPoint prepared for this, but I'll just summarize. So in May last year, Council adopted the final, what we call the final financial plan for 2016 to 2020. And always during the year, things happen, changes are made, or new budget requests come in. And so there was a number of those that happened throughout the year, some of which council approved through resolution. Some of them are accounting changes that finance made. And so in the end, we have to take another budget to council called an amended financial plan for 2016 to 2020 for council to consider and approve. Most of the changes have already been approved through resolution by council, so hopefully council would approve this. Just to highlight some of the changes that happened during the year, in our revenue side, we increased the building permit revenue by $25,000 because it's been building permits were quite a bit higher than what our budget amount was. The election, the by-election was something that was not anticipated at the time we did our budgeting, so there was a $35,000 budget item put in there for that, for the cost of that. We had a number of items accounting-wise where we had some items that were in capital that belonged in the operating budget, not in capital. As we determine what these items are or what the magnitude is, we will move them from capital to minor capital or vice versa. Sometimes if they end up being a little bit bigger than we thought and they meet our thresholds, then we'll move them. So there was a few items like that. In order to help with some of the cost increases in this amended budget, we reduced the salaries for the manager of current planning because we didn't fill that position. So we had budgeted for that position to be filled for the whole year, so we reduced that salary, including benefits. That was $104,000. Building inspections, we had to increase the legal costs. We had a couple of very costly legal disputes going on within the building inspection department, so that was increased by $25,000. The electrical upgrades on the Alberni Highway that was mentioned earlier for Christmas decorations, that was $13,500, so we increased that budget to cover that. Council had already approved that through resolution. And in the solid waste area, we had misbudgeted the amount for the refuse collection through the RDN. There was a mix-up on the fees, so we had to increase that budget by $12,000. And in the capital side, we had a few items. We had a land acquisition we budgeted for, which hasn't happened yet, but it was some land relating to homelessness, relating to a shelter, I believe, homeless shelter possibility. We have Jensen Greenway was increased for $20,000 relating to putting a path through from Jensen to McVickers, and there was a few other changes relating to capital. So altogether, that was a $229,000 decrease in our accumulated surplus. So there was actually a budget increase of $229,000 in between capital and operating costs. And the recommendations as per the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Butterworth. Are there any members of the gallery who would like to provide comment to council on this particular item before I go to council? No? Okay. Members of council, any questions? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I think through you to Mr. Butterworth. So when you say that we have this excess now, or the surplus, is that also including that the employee that we didn't hire? Are you including that as surplus?
Yes, that offsets some of the additional cost increase that were in there that I mentioned, such as the land of $250,000. So that by not hiring that offsets that somewhat.
So I have a question then, because we still need to hire, is that not correct? We still need that body, is that not correct? So we're still going to need to pay that person. So are you saying we're going to take that money out of the 2016 budget and now we're going to have a new 80,000 into this 2017 budget? I just need to understand exactly how is this money moving?
Well, that money is not moving. What it is that the money was not needed in 2016. It will be needed in 2017. So it's already in. When we have a position, it's in there for every year of the 5-year plan. So we just reduced it for 2016 because the position was vacant. So it freed up $104,000 of funds to fund other items that I went over, such as the election and the land purchases.
Hey, can I call the vote, or has anybody got any questions? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Next report is from Mr. Russell. I need a mover and a seconder for the consideration of a development permit for a landscaping retaining device at 668 Gatian Street. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Salter, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Mr. Russell, would you please give us the background on this issue?
If I may, Your Worship, so before Council for consideration is issuance of a development permit for the aforementioned landscaping retaining device and drainage conduit. The purpose of the device is basically to lower the water table at the crest of the slope in order to make it less susceptible to basically soil creep and to therefore to improve the stability of the slope.
For Mr. Russell. Ms. Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Worship, and directed to our Director of Community Planning. Thank you for the report. It was concise and everything. I guess my question is, do you foresee the adjoining properties or any of the other properties in that area coming forward before Council? Because I don't suspect that one piece of property is just affected.
If I may, Worship, through to Councillor Patterson, the whole Parksville Bluff area is in a development permit area for that very purpose. The whole area is can't speak tonight, a history of bank instability issues. So for the foreseeable future, from time to time, we certainly will get applications for development permits in that area.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions? I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next report is a follow-up report on consideration of a zoning and development bylaw amendment application at Paradise Mini Golf and Fun Park. I need a mover and a seconder for the recommendations. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Burden. Mr. Russell, once again, could you please give us the background? This is fairly straightforward. We've discussed this before. Go ahead.
If my Worship, I'll be brief. The applicant hosted an open house, advertised. There wasn't any attendance. Since hosting the open house, we have not received any correspondence as of the date of the report. There will be further opportunities for public input at an upcoming public hearing. The recommendations are as per the report, and there's further follow-up in the bylaw section of the agenda this evening.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Russell? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Next, the Community Park Master Plan and Park Survey. Mr. Diggins, good evening and welcome to Council. Just before I ask you to give us the background, I need a mover and a seconder for the two recommendations. Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Beale. Mr. Diggins, please proceed with the background on this issue.
Great. Thank you, Your Worship. The 2006 Community Park Master Plan required updating, and a budget was identified for its completion in 2016. So in June 2016, the City issued a request for proposals to engage a consultant or consultant team in the development of a comprehensive Community Park Master and Operational Plan. In July, the City received 2 proposals in response to the RFP, and an evaluation committee made up of City staff determined that neither proposal was acceptable. The evaluation committee provided an opportunity, however, the evaluation committee provided an opportunity for one consultant to revise and resubmit their proposal based on staff comments. However, they chose to withdraw as key project leads were no longer employed with the consultant. Due to the poor response, staff engaged a third party to review the RFP document and consider options for gaining more interest in the project. Staff also became aware of an opportunity to work with the Master of Community Planning program at VIU. Staff met with Dr. Pam Shaw, director of the program, on 2 occasions and subsequently received a proposal outlining a timeline and list of deliverables for a community park master plan, as well as a detailed general park survey. Considering the master's program experience with similar projects for other communities, such as View Royal and Sook, staff has confidence in the master's students with guidance from Dr. Pam Shaw to deliver a comprehensive community park master plan, in addition to providing the city with a solid head start on the parks and open space master plan. Recommendations are as per the agenda.
Questions for Mr. Diggins? By the way, if I may, I think that this is great synergy. I read the report in great detail, and I'm confident that we're going to get a really, really good job from this group. I like the approach. I like the consultation process with everybody that's involved, especially the tourism industry. So it's great. Members of council, Councillor Patterson and Councillor B.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just wanted to kind of echo some of what you're saying. I've had contact with Dr. Shaw and with the ODCA, and that in regards to some of the programs that are at VIU, and I'm not sure if everyone's aware, but the Oceanside area has the most, second I have to think of, students in the high school and everything that are working with trades programs and working towards an apprenticeship type program, and that in all of BC, and we were awarded kind of that type of award. I apologize, but it was just mentioned at a chamber meeting, so I wasn't privy to it prior to research it. But again, the synergy, and I'm hoping that maybe we might even get some staff members in the future, so it would be lovely to see.
Good points. Thank you. Councillor Beale.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I, too, wanted to echo comments that have been made, and nice to have you here this evening, Mr. Diggins. And I guess I was very excited to read about how this unfolded, and it just seems like a great opportunity for us. And I think the engagement, the public engagement process will be very interesting, and I think that our residents will really look forward to being involved with this as well. So thank you very much.
Councillor Oates.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have a couple of questions. On page 62 of our agenda, and you outlined it in your report, and perhaps you can't answer this question, but maybe the CAO can. It said that in light of the limited responses to the request for proposal, staff sought the advice of a well-known and reputable public engagement firm. How much did that cost us?
There was no cost.
Okay, thank you. My next questions are again about money, and on page 64, the document that was provided to us, it talks about financial impact. I did some quick math there. It looks to me like this proposal from VIU comes in somewhere around the 70 grand. That's what it says in the document there. And am I correct then in adding in the next document 80,000 to the 50,000 for that the original plan would have cost us $130,000 if we had found somebody to accept the RFP way back when? Is the difference between the two price tags $130,000 and $70,000?
No, if I may, Your Worship, the proposals that came in July of 2016, their prices that came in were just over $80,000 each. However, as I said, the staff review that was conducted, it was determined that the scope of work that the proposals were providing wasn't quite up to the level of public engagement was a big ticket item that it just wasn't there. So when we did have the RFP reviewed, I can't remember the gentleman's name now, Mr. Delaney, he said that the proposal itself was quite comprehensive, and the responses seemed to be rushed, so perhaps there wasn't enough time for the consultants to provide enough detail in the proposals, and that's why we went back to one of them to ask them. We gave them specific comments that would give them an opportunity to revise and resubmit, but unfortunately they withdrew. So the cost for the community park master plan with the VIU students, the $50,000 is their cost. Our cost, I think, is $15,000. However, there are costs that we're going to be able to take from the current the $50,000 that is budgeted for the Parks and Trails and Open Space Master Plan. So there's some savings as well there.
Thank you. I'll be voting in support of this. I believe that there's a lot of synergies and probably future opportunities that could come out of this. So I'm looking for. I really wish the students much success, both for our sake and for. I believe we're probably getting a bargain here.
What kind of feedback are we going to get as this process is going on? Will it be on a fairly regular basis? Because it looks like there's some exciting things that they're going to be doing with regard to consultation. So I wouldn't expect us to get this at the end. I would expect that throughout the process, council would be advised through a delegation presenting us to where they're at, what they found, and that sort of thing. Is that the way it's going to go?
Yeah, and if I may, Your Worship, I understand that through talking with Dr. Pam Shaw, the students are actually very excited to be able to present to staff, to staff and council. Details, we don't have the details worked out immediately yet, but yes, there would definitely be some opportunities for VIU students to present some of their findings throughout the process.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Salter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I just wanted, so is the end date on this October then of this year? Is that when we would expect?
That is the proposed end date, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Thank you. That's unanimous. Thanks very much. Here we go. We have, this is next report I need to get received. It's Hockey Night in Canada Play-On Tournament. Do I have a mover and a seconder to receive the report? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Oates. Now, is there anybody that wants to... First, let me go to Mrs. Tardif to give us the background on this issue. I gather it's rather time-consuming and rather expensive.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the Parksville-Qualicum Beach Tourism Association, we were approached to consider hosting Hockey Night in Canada Play-On. It's a street tournament for and it would be a street hockey tournament for the next 3 or ideally 4 years. At the December 5 meeting, Council directed staff to investigate the direct and indirect costs to the city for participation, and the report is included in your agenda. A play-on event has not been held on Vancouver Island for 3 years, and the organization is very keen to partner with the community on the island to again host the annual tournament. The date that they're suggesting is June 23rd to June 25th, over a weekend. Hosted by the municipality, the event involves closing about 1 kilometer of a prominent street with a total requirement of a minimum of about 100,000 square feet for the event. A Vancouver Island event, well promoted locally, might be expected to attract at minimum 100 to 150 teams. And for your information, the teams play 4-on-4, as well as many referees, volunteers, and spectators. The recommendations are as per the agenda.
Okay. Any comments or that's been received? Yes, Councillor Burton.
I've had some conversations with the Parksville-Qualicum Beach Tourism Association around this. It would be fantastic for us as a community to be able to host this. I'm not able to support the $182,000 estimate. However, it would be really nice to look at it next year when we can maybe get a better handle on how we could fund that through sponsorships, through other revenues besides taxpayer dollars. And I think it's doable. And hold a number of events throughout the course of the city that are funded in a number of different ways. And I think that it would be an awesome opportunity for Parksville to attract a huge number of people to our community. But at the same time, I can't support the 182 this year because they want to make an announcement February 1st as to the selected community. Well, that's a month, not even a month, 2 weeks, and we can't raise that kind of money in 2 weeks. And I don't think we can go ahead without some sort of certainty that we're able to raise that kind of money.
I contacted some presidents of some of the larger organizations around town, and the volunteers at this point in time are just not there, simply because it's going to be a big year anyway. Councillor Beale.
Yes, I'd just like to echo most of what Councillor Burden was saying. I think it does sound like a fantastic opportunity. It sounds like it'd be a lot of fun and fun to promote something that's very active, which I think is good for all of us. However, I also note that the goal is to have a commitment for a number of seasons. So I would love to see something like this in the future, although I don't even think from this that it would be just next year, although I don't know how many of these they try to host around the province at a time. But I agree, it just feels like it's not the year, and it's certainly not enough notice for us, but it's interesting to learn a bit about it now.
Okay, any further comments, Councillor Rhodes?
Yeah, now I'm in a bit of an owly mood. So we had a motion, this is the third motion that has been on the floor tonight that's been debated as if it was another motion. This was simply a motion to receive, and yet I've heard people talk about reasons why we shouldn't support it. I come to these meetings prepared. I read the documents. That's the reason why I was ready to vote on a motion to receive. If I wanted to debate why we shouldn't do it, I'd make a motion to support the money. So, I think the indication that we don't have an appetite for it is clearly indicated when you pass a motion to receive it. So, as much as I enjoy listening to people's color commentary on things like this, I got better things to do.
Duly noted, Councillor Oates. Okay. The next item we have is, the next report is from Mrs. Kaler, and it's the Parks and Open Spaces bylaw implementation. Pardon me? Oh, we didn't vote on the motion to receive? I thought we did. Oh, I apologize. I thought we had voted on the motion to receive. Okay, I'll double apologize. All those in favor? Okay, we're moving on. Parks and Open Space bylaw implementation. Do I have a mover and a seconder for the recommendations? Moved by Councillor Oates, seconded by Councillor Patterson. Okay. Mrs. Kaler, would you please give us the background on the issue regarding Parks and Open Space bylaw implementation?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last spring, Council adopted the city's Parks and Open Spaces bylaw, and Council will probably recall that there was quite a bit of discussion about the reasons for the new bylaw, and most of this centered on the bylaw reflecting the outcome of several high-profile charter cases on the applicability of local government bylaws to overnight accommodation in public parks and open spaces by people who are experiencing homelessness. In recent months, the city's bylaw compliance division has been receiving complaints about activities in public parks and open spaces. Many of the complaints are about criminal activities which fall outside the purview of bylaw officers. Staff in a number of different departments have been working together to effectively implement the Parks and Open Space bylaw. A very effective partnership with the Oceanside RCMP has also been developed to help manage these issues collaboratively. The actions taken by staff to date to address the issue of overnight accommodation in public spaces are outlined in the report, and recommendations are per the agenda.
Any questions for Mrs. Kaler? Seeing none, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on to bylaws. We have a second reading, the Zoning and Development Amendment Bylaw 2016, number 2000.102. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Rhodes, seconded by Councillor Burton. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. The next bylaw is the 5-year financial plan amendment bylaw 2016-2020, number 1526.1. Do I have a mover and a seconder for this recommendation? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Patterson. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. That is carried. Third reading and final adoption, zoning and development amendment bylaw 2016, number 2000.103. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Burton, seconded by Councillor Salter. All those in favor? Thank you. That is carried. Okay, we're moving on to new business. And I'll just start off very, very briefly. I want to wish everybody the beginning of the new year a happy and healthy and prosperous new year as we start the 2017. And just to sort of get everybody in the mood after this cold snap that we've had, I want to point out that the Parksville Beach Festival dates are set for July 14th through August the 20th, this coming summer. And this year's theme for the Quality Food Sense Sculpting Competition and Exhibition is Canada 150, celebrating 150 years. And lastly, last Thursday night I attended the Canadian Home Builders Association dinner in Nanaimo at their invitation. And I just wanted to tell you that I'm going to be talking to staff about this and you at some point in time in the near future. They put forward some reports about regulatory costs and approval process delays by certain municipalities. They've looked at the development cost charges variation by certain municipalities. And they've made some very interesting recommendations with regards to the upcoming provincial election. So I'll get you all that, and we can discuss that at some point in time. But it was, needless to say, it was a very interesting meeting. So I'm going to go around the table. I'm going to start off with Councillor Patterson, Councillor Rhodes, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have two items. First of all, I would like to make a motion in support for the coldest night of the year event. And my motion is that Council continue its support for the Parksville Oceanside Coldest Night of the Year 2017 event to be hosted Saturday, February 25th, 2017 by the Island Crisis Care Society by waiving the city's special event permit fees and damage deposit requirements. I can speak to that.
Add some more to that?
I would like to just speak to it briefly. For those of you who are not familiar with it, this event is a fun, family-friendly walking fundraiser. It's organized by the Island Crisis Care Society to raise money for the hungry, homeless, and hurting members of our community. I will add that this does help provide for an outreach worker, which is a very important part of this whole approach. The walk will happen in hundreds of other communities across Canada. Walkers can choose between a 2, 5, or 10-kilometer walk. The walk allows participants to see a hint of the challenges faced by those experiencing homelessness in the Oceanside area. And since 2011, the Coldest Night of the Year event has raised over $12 million for local charity partners in our community.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rhodes.
Thank you, Your Worship. How much, what's the financial cost of waiving the two items that was requested in the motion? What's the dollar figure that would be attached to that so that we can add it to our things that we're not doing for homelessness?
Thank you, Your Worship. Basically, the damage deposit is $500, but that is returnable if no items are damaged. And special event fees are about $100 to $150, I believe.
Yes, thank you. I would like to mention that as this year's liaison for the Homelessness Task Force, the extreme weather shelter has been in operation since December 4th. so that's 43 nights. And during that time, although originally set up to accommodate about 8 people, perhaps 1 or 2 more, it has in fact been over capacity up to 15 participants seeking shelter there of an evening. So it has been extremely an extremely important support to have in the community for those facing homelessness. Yes, it's been very, very busy. There has been assistance with getting food from the food bank on Friday nights, and a whole bank of volunteers who, quite frankly, are becoming very burned out. The way it operates is that there is a staff member there, but in addition to 1 volunteer. And so there is a plea out there for people who might be interested in taking on this very important and I think very rewarding work, that there's an opportunity to volunteer. I think the weather is supposed to warm up a little bit for a while, but heavy rain is also an extreme weather situation, and I believe the cold is going to return again. So something to think about, those who might have some time to donate.
Just a little, I've been dealing with the executive director of the SOS on this particular issue, and it's quite amazing. The good work that folk are providing and the money that folk are providing, and it just goes to show that Parksville is a pretty good, caring city. Anything else? Councillor Salter.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to briefly mention that I had attended the Brant meeting for the upcoming Brant Festival, and that's actually, we've had 2-3 meetings so far, and so it's coming along quite well, as well as the museum, which I was really impressed with the museum and how they're moving forward. They really are moving forward. The Historical Society, and yes, I think they're doing a phenomenal job, and I think they've turned a corner, and I'm really really excited to be working with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Burton.
Yep, I got a couple of things and some questions before I shoot my mouth off too far. Can I ask questions before I make a motion? Mr. Oates, is that okay? Okay. So, what purpose does the council contingency fund serve other than to respond to financial requests that come forward from various groups over the course of the year?
I think the word you're using is unforeseen or unexpected.
Unexpected.
So if council wanted to, say, host an event for something, for instance, the first year that we did volunteer recognition, we didn't have a budget for that. Yep. So council utilized funds from council contingency to do that. So it's basically a fund there for council to use at their discretion for things that come up during the year that they may wish to host or participate in or provide grants to.
Okay. So, I'd like to make a motion that we move $10,000 from the council contingency fund to the grants and aid fund, that the application process be on a quarterly basis, and that all requests for financial support go through the grants and aid committee. I think I said most of it earlier, and I took some time to write something out that seems logical. I'm open to amendments.
I have a question before I just go to members of council. Councillor, Mrs. Comas, how long would it take to put this into operation? Because we've got something coming up in March, so the recommendation is 4 times a year instead of twice a year.
Well, Your Worship, that 4 times a year is every 3 months. So March would be the first, and so once we would do March, then June, September, and then again at the end of the year in December. And in terms of the transfer of the funding, I mean, that's just a financial transaction.
Thank you. I've got another question, but I'm going to go to Councillor Oates, who had his hand up.
Thank you. If we were to approve this motion and next June a group came forward with a request and sent a letter to us, how would that be any different than today?
We'd have their financials. We'd have criteria to assess the request, other than us sitting around the table and making a decision in 10 minutes. We'd have...
That's a whole lot more detailed than what was in your motion.
Well, we have a grants and aid process now.
Right, and the grants and aid process now, the only thing that I heard differently is you're going to increase the amount of money that's available for that and the frequency of intakes and requests. So again, how would that make it any different than a request coming in today?
Well, I've been advised this evening by staff that there is criteria that exists within the grants and aid program that is different from us looking at these things on a one-of basis.
So again, how would that make it different in the future? I'm wondering if not the intent of your motion is so that council doesn't have to deal with these requests, because I believe that we're always going to get these requests. If we take in if the grant and aid budget was $1 million and you were able to apply for it daily, there would still be folks coming to us like the Scouts and other folks coming to us in emergent situations asking for donations, and I don't see a mechanism where we can abdicate our responsibility to deal with those requests. So changing the amount in the grants and aid and changing the dates, for me, doesn't do a thing to address the issue that I think you're trying to get at, because we have those parameters now. There's just less money and less frequent, yet the request is still here. So how can increasing the frequency and increasing the money without changing some other side of protocol or policy have any substantive effect on what we're doing?
Well, I don't know if I forgot to read the last line or if you didn't hear it, but it says, and that all requests for financial support go through the Grants and Aid Committee. They won't come here. Period.
Okay, I can't support that. I can't support cutting off a line of communication to the public, to council. I believe the citizens always should have the right to come and make requests. I believe emergent situations happen, and to simply say to someone, no, you can't have the money because it's got to go through a committee. No, I don't. I think we should be more responsive to the public than that. I'm sorry, I won't be able to support that, Kim.
You want more flexibility? Okay, Councillor Beal.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, I also have concerns with this. I think that they're, good intentions. I do think that when a group comes and asks for request funds because of an emergency situation or whatever it is, I do think it's reasonable for us to expect an accounting, a detailed account if something is approved, that should be part of what we're expecting. But I do think that, as Councillor Oates has mentioned, I don't see us cutting off all opportunity for residents to come. There are also, with the criteria that we have, certainly at present in grants and aid, some groups that may come to us for something very, very valid and important for the city. Let's say, I might say, broom busting. Maybe they need a little bit of money because they've worn out their loppers and need new loppers, and could we please help them? They're providing a service for the city. And yet the way the grants and aid work out, maybe they wouldn't quite fit. Maybe 40% of them who are volunteering are outside. Like there are a number of criteria. MANA coming to us may or may not fit that. So I think that there are groups that don't exactly fit, and I also think that when it does come before us, as difficult as it may be at times, it's also perhaps that much more transparent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also can't support this for the same reason. I think that the community should have that opportunity, and we need to be available to them. Crises occur. Whether or not we value whatever it is that they're bringing, that's up to us. But it's a different criteria, I think, than the grants and aid. They're two separate entities. And I think that's why we have them separated out the way we do. And so we do address budgets and financials on the one hand, but if there's a crisis means an emergent situation or something of that effect, something unexpected, then we are also available for that. And I agree, I can't support this.
I have a question for Mrs. Comas. How much money do we have in council contingency on average? I forget, is it $20,000 a year, $25,000?
$25,000
a year. Okay, seeing no more comments, I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that motion is defeated. Thank you. Anything else, Councillor Burton, under new business?
Yeah, I don't want to let this rest, and I'll go back and I'll do some work on it. I would like to see more than a letter. That's all. Okay? And so maybe I'll sit down with Councillor Oates and we'll throw some things around. But I'd just like to see more than a letter coming to us asking for money. I just think it's wrong.
Fair ball. Okay, so we're moving on. I need a mover and a seconder to go into camera. Do I have a mover and a seconder to go into camera? Moved by Councillor Beal, seconded by Councillor Oates. All right. We're moving pursuant to Section 90.1E and K of the Community Charter. Council proceed to a closed meeting to consider items relating to land and negotiations and related discussions respecting a proposed provision of a municipal service. Thank you.